good morning, and welcome to the original Loretta Brown Show, radio to open the heart, heal the soul, and awaken the consciousness. Good morning. It's chilly, Benny. It's
It
chilly.
it is. Do you have an extra blanket with you this
I
morning?
do. Look it.
Good,
I have
good.
a little blankie right here.
I guessed it perfectly.
I
True,
have,
true
well,
Pacific Northwesterners.
that's right. I got my bunny slippers on, right? That's
Aw,
the way you got to
Nice.
be, because my kids gave them to me, and so you have to wear them.
I love it. I
Anyway,
love it.
yeah, I do love it too. Anyway, I hope everybody is feeling good this morning. I have a wonderful guest. I'm going to do a little astrology check-in, then I'll bring him in. But yeah. I just kind of feel like I want to do a shout out to families and, remember to keep the love going out there, everybody. Keep it going. Put your arms around each other going into the holiday season. And one of my clients yesterday, I was talking and she says, people are crazy on the road rage. I said, they're just, I don't know, just calm down.
Let them
It's
have their
okay.
time. They can
You'll,
they can handle it.
you'll make it. You'll make
Yeah.
it. Yeah. Anyway, I'm the owner of Reiki Oasis, located right here in the greater Seattle area for years and years and years, 27 years to be exact. And we offer a lot of things over there. You can find out more about me at ReikiOasis.com and schedule anything at schedule.ReikiOasis.com. I do have a Reiki Masterclass coming up on Saturday. For those of you that have been through Reiki 1 and 2, this will be the third and final series in learning Reiki. So it's always a good thing. It's good for everybody. So if you're interested, let me know. On the third Saturday, which is December 18th, during really so much stuff going on astrologically that I don't know what to say, I'm going to have my monthly class for women, the Temple of the Divine Feminine. We are doing it via Zoom, and it will be powerful and potent, especially because we're headed toward, I don't know, bringing 2021 to some sort of a closure and preparing for 2022, which is going to be even bigger, but in a different way. And talking about the end of the year, I have my end of the year special ceremony. It's a despacho, a prayer for the gods, where you can join with me, really clear out the energies of the old and intentionally bring in the energies of the new. And that will be on December 28th at 7 p.m. And once again, Zoom call. Please sign up at schedule.reikioasis.com. Big shout out to my listener supports. I am a listener supported show. You can go to patreon.com/the Loretta Brown Show and be part of the group. More stuff coming there next year, 2022. And quick astrology checking, because I have a lot to talk about with my guest today, who apparently it touches my heart, and I know will touch yours. But December skies are very busy. We began with a solar eclipse, new moon in Sagittarius, a fiery start to the month. And it's the fire of the phoenix rising. It's time for something new, isn't it? What a couple of years we've been having, right? Maybe our whole lives have been that way. But it set the stage for the month. It's bringing in a much more creative energy and is inviting us to look into our hearts. What is it that you truly value? Because the skies want us to tap into that and share it with the world. What is it that matters to you? And I think we've been going through a lot of adjustments lately of looking at things. I was talking to someone the other day. I says, maybe it's time to just throw everything into the middle of the floor and say, I only need these things right here. Like love really needs to be there. These things that we value give us indicators as to what it is that we're really here to do that will bring us meaning and others meaning. When we do what is from our heart, it actually blesses and is good for everyone else too. So think about those things as the month goes on. We've got Venus going retrograde, and it does rule love, relationships, money, and the things that we value. We, of course, will have the winter solstice coming up. We got Christmas, we got holiday celebrations, and we have the final of the 3 Saturn-Uranus squares, which is ruled over this year. And that has been all about structure, the way it has to be versus freedom clashing against each other. And we do have to have some sort of order. We do. So it can't just be chaos all the time. So we've been trying to figure out what that means. And then right at the end of the year, Jupiter enters Pisces, well, where it will remain for most of the year of 2022. This week, a couple of things to put on your calendar. December 11th, Venus aligns with Pluto. Venus, the planet that rules the heart and the things of the heart, and Pluto, the great transformation. And it's setting the stage for that Venus retrograde. And we're going to be feeling empowered by heart-led choices. So once again, I keep talking about the heart. And then you might want to mark 12/12 on your calendar. The 12th day of the 12th month gives a numerology code of 1212. And this number indicates movement into higher dimensions and can signify change. And 1212 is a great day. You know, if you don't have a meditation practice or a quiet practice, it's a great day to tune in and see what kind of messages you can get from the higher realms. So have fun with that astrology, stay grounded. And I'm very delighted to bring my guest on today. My guest is Joe McQuillen. He's just simply an amazing man. Well, he's Irish. He's an Irish Catholic. Sorry, everybody. Just keep tuning in. Keep listening. You're going to hear good stuff. He's married. He's the father of 3 children, one of them on the other side. He is the youngest of 10 children. And although he's had 2 successful careers, he is at heart a blue-collar kid from Buffalo, New York. A proud member of AA, many years sober, Joe says that it helped him get closer to God and carry him through the dark times after his boys' crossing. And 3 years ago, on December 6, 2018, Joe was on my show for the first time. We talked about his book, My Search for Christopher on the Other Side, and I'm so happy to welcome him again with his newest book, We're Not Done Yet, Pop, My Lessons from the Other Side. So Joe, welcome to the show. And I also have to welcome Christopher to the show because he's brushing the back of my hair. Yeah.
Thanks, Loretta. I'm glad he's with you. I feel him around my neck also. So
Okay.
those are the indications that he's in the house, you know,
Yeah.
and he's around.
Yeah. It's such a joy to have you on the show. It truly is. For those people that are just tuning in and who possibly don't know you,
Sure.
And I know you tell this story a lot, but could you please tell us what happened?
You know, I don't think without telling the story that you'll be able to grasp either one of the books. So, and once again, being Irish means I don't know how to tell a short story, but I'm going to do my best. You know, this all started, in January 3rd, 2016. Christopher was home from college. He was 21. My oldest of 3 kids, and I adored my boy. And he was pretty like his mom, and he was a little wild like his old man, and we really connected. So he, the last weekend before they were all going back to school, they decided to spend a day and a night at a friend's lake house up in Lake Beulah, Wisconsin, which is about an hour and a half north of the North Shore of Chicago, straight up west on a little lake. There's a myriad of little lakes up there. And there were a dozen of them. And they decided to, go to a local pub, shoot some pool, kick up their heels, drink a little bit, take the party back to the lake house. And at 3:00 in the morning, Chris and 3 of his friends walked outside, saw a boathouse, opened it up, saw a 3-man canoe. All 4 of them jumped in with, layered clothing, unlaced Timberland boots, snoot full of alcohol, and paddled out on a partially frozen lake. It was a perfect storm, and none of them made it back. I was waiting to watch a Buffalo Bills game with Chris on Sunday, and with his little brother Will. And I got a text from the young man whose parents owned the lake house. Said, "Mr. McHugh, Chris and 3 friends are missing." So I grabbed my dog, jumped in my Jeep, headed up north. and fully expecting to find him in a boathouse with a co-ed or sleeping on somebody's couch up there that they just met or whatever. I didn't expect the call that I got next, which was from an uncle who lived a couple doors away from the kid who owned the house, and said, it's no longer a search, but a recovery, that all four had drowned. I was, completely, I would say, in shock. I finished the drive. To this moment, Lord, I'm walking in and, and excuse me if I get a little emotional, but I walk in that house and I see the picture window, and out the window was the lake with the rescue boats and the lights and the flashing, police boats. And it just, breaks my heart all over again. It's not that it ever leaves, but, at that point, it occurred to me that my dad was on the other side. Now, how I knew that is 16 years before. There was a Nancy Myers was a medium that I just saw on a whim or whatever. And most of the reading was kind of mundane until we got to the very end. And she said, your father's here, and he's holding a caboose and telling you railroad. Now, if you look over my shoulder, there's a railroad lantern on that dresser or on that bookcase. My dad spent 40 years, raised 10 kids on the railroad salary. Had the most seniority between Buffalo, New York, and Syracuse. Union guy. All 5 of the boys from the family worked on the railroad in college. I stayed on after and worked as a brakeman. So we were, a railroad family. So when he said that, it wasn't any magical, answers to the universe, or he didn't give me the numbers to the lottery, but I did accept one thing, that, okay, my dad's somewhere and he can communicate with me. So 16 years later, I pull this out of my emotional file cabinet and think, wait a minute, if my old man's somewhere and Christopher just left, he's got to be with him. And that's what started my search, Loretta. That's when I started. I wasn't ready to face the world without Chris. But you got to understand, I'm a practical guy. Take a look at me. I got a brush cut, broken nose. I don't look like the kind of guy that would light sage and have a crystal in my hand. And I do all of that, right? And align my chakras. I do all of that because I want the edge. Now I was a car dealer, so I'm not a naive guy. So I figured I'm going to try to figure this out. And if it's not real, if it's just hokey BS, let's cross it off the list, right? And that started the journey. The journey was with mediums, spirit groups, everybody who spoke about the metaphysical. I wanted to know. I wanted to read about it. I wanted to digest it. I wanted to figure out how to connect. And dang if I didn't.
That is an amazing story, and I'm crying too. So for those people that are on the YouTube, you can see us mopping our eyes, and it's a big story.
Yeah.
It's a big story.
Yeah.
I love you saying the word crystal and chakra, because it's shocking coming out of your mouth, and it's delightful. It's like,
I know it.
Yeah.
I've had people say to me, kind of guys, buddies, that if it didn't come from you, I wouldn't believe it. But since you said it, I buy it. And that's important. And that's why Chris wants me to spread this word, because he tells me I'm a good ambassador because I don't look like the type, and that'll allow other people that don't look like or feel like the type to embrace the metaphysical, to embrace the grief, to embrace the hope that maybe there's a connection. And not only can they connect with them here, but they'll be together again on the other side. And so that's kind of the path that I'm on. I didn't choose it. It wasn't my idea. It was something my son wanted me to do. So I just follow the breadcrumbs,
Yeah, I really mean it. It's a big deal. I've been on my edgy life my whole life, right? This is the way I was born, right? And even for me, at times it's been difficult to just, say, hey, this is really what's going on. But I do agree that coming from you, it's got an extra potency in it. I think it also opens the doorway to those that have had such a hard time. And like you say, guys,
Right.
man, they don't sit around going, hey, how you feeling about something,
Yeah.
You know
What? But I've also fortunately enough, surround myself with guys that do that. And they're guys that played in the NFL, guys that run funds, guys that own companies, guys that, work in the trades. I mean, guys, and yet the sensitivity part is there because they're men enough that they don't have to hide that sensitive side, and they know when, when I get quiet, what it's about, and they respect that. And I know them support it. Somebody asked me early on, what do you say to somebody that just doesn't buy in? This woman was doing a radio broadcast from Dallas. And I said, tell them to change the channel. If this isn't for you, God bless you, move on, right? This is for somebody who's lost somebody and is so afraid that it's over. The connection's over, the love is over, the reunion's over, all of it. And it's not. Susan Geisman, the brilliant author, titled the book Still Right Here. I signed a book and sent it out to my editor today, and for a friend of hers who lost a son. And I put that your son is still right here. So I'm not afraid to steal her quote, and she'll get over it. And that's what these families got to know, that their children, not even family, their spouse. My best friend in the world lost his wife, going on, now 15 years. But and he found spirituality through that adversity. After trying all the other aspects of it, by the way, that, other aspects of hiding and your feelings didn't work. And he embraced that. And he and I understand, what grief really is, what grief feels like.
You're saying something there, because the loss of a child it's unmentionable. Like, right. People don't know how to deal with it, but we're really talking about grief. So many people lose, a deeply loved one.
Right.
And this is what I call almost the forbidden subject.
Sure it is. This and suicide, right? Both of them
yes,
are, and I wrote about suicide in the first book, and I felt, we're clannish people, as you know. I felt like I was betraying family secrets, and I'm sure there are members of the family that aren't pleased that I did that. But I needed to get that message out. Chris didn't take his life. I had members of my family that did. But there's another level of grief, and there's another level of shame and blame that's unearned, that comes from parents who've lost kids through suicide, because they think they could have done something better, different. They could have made a change. So my heart is broken. So I wrote, my older brother, Bobby, took his life in the 70s. And the priest, and the name of the title of the chapter is God Called Him Home Early. And back then the Catholic Church was a little stringent about burying people if they've taken their lives in hallowed ground. And this priest just said, God called him home early. And I thought that was just such a loving way to describe what happened to my brother Bobby. So those families that don't want to talk about that, talk about it. And the friends that don't know what to say something. Now don't say something like, I know what you're going through. I lost a cat.
Yeah.
What I mean? My great aunt, passed away, but people, we just want to know that you acknowledge that they were there, and that's important to parents who've lost kids. Don't look away. Don't, change direction. We've had that happen, and our friends are amazing, but there's people who've, especially Sally, felt that. Me, I'm from 10 kids. We moved to the suburbs when I was like 6. 10 kids, dogs, spontaneous football games in front yards, parties, bicycles. The neighbors hated us. So I grew up really not caring what anybody else thought. And I've kind of carried that through today. If this isn't for you, if you think I left the reservation, God bless you. I don't care. But if you lost somebody, specifically a child, you're who I want to talk to. You're who I want to connect with. You're who Christopher wants me to give some hope to. I've got this amazing gift of connecting with my son, which I still do at least twice a month, right? Where we actually connect, and he gives me downloads, and I dictate, write it down. And that's in both books, and it'll continue in the third. And I've got this amazing gift, but I've got to give it away to keep it, right? If I hoard this like it's my private stash, God knows if it's continues. Christopher's put me on a path, and as long as I follow that direction with an open heart, with a clean heart, I think he and I are going to stay connected until he greets me when I make that big step across.
Yeah, you're saying so many things in there. I want to, the shame blame game, right? Yeah. And also because I'm thinking of a couple of things, because I've got some clients who have lost kids and in just freakish accidents, freakish, and a lot of times people will they blame themselves. Maybe I could have done this, maybe I could have done that, there should have been this, there was an indicator, blah blah blah. But then the other thing that I want to get to is a lot of people have some idea that you should be done grieving, right?
Oh yeah. Whoever said time heals all wounds never lost a kid. Now, there's a wonderful movie called Manchester by the Sea, where a woman lost 3 kids in a fire. I think it was 3. It was horrible. And later on, she was talking and said, my heart was broken. It'll always be broken. See, that's what it is. Now, I've got a pretty full life. I've got a lovely career. My daughter, Caroline, my middle child, 25, was teaching, and through all the COVID nonsense, joined me in the mortgage business. So I see her every day. My 22-year-old is at Boulder, going to school. He's got a nice life. My wife's a therapist, wonderful, brilliant, a lot smarter than I am, and better looking, and she's got a full stable of clients. She's a therapist. She just became certified in grief counseling as well. I mean, who knows better than a mom who lost a kid? So she's amazing. I have a great group of friends. I love to golf, too old for hockey, but I have a wonderful life. But I go through life with a piece of my heart broken. And you just got to know that. And as long as you know that, you're okay. Right, Loretta? Right. As long as you're not anticipating to wake up like one day everything's fine, And a lot of times I wake up, everything's fine. And then I remember, dang, Chris isn't here. When I'm meaning here on this side, because with all this metaphysical knowledge, right, with all this knowledge I have, I would much rather be abysmally ignorant and know nothing and watch Thursday night football with a pizza with my boy tonight, but that's not in the cards. What's in the cards is whether through exit points or soul contracts. Christopher left this side 2016, and I can't unring that bell, but what am I going to do about it? I either can forget that he was ever here, or I can find out how to connect with him. And that's what I've done.
Yeah, I think this is, like I said, this is really powerful. You're absolutely right. A piece of your heart is, well, you're broken, but you're learning how to navigate it. It's like, this is different now.
Right. And, you get curveballs. Christmas is a curveball. The holiday is a curveball. Hell, I was unloading groceries last night, and I remember yelling at him when he got into an accident coming home from Vermont, in 2015 or 14, and yelling at him. And I just started crying, thinking, you SOB, wouldn't you love to have that day back? But you don't, So I know that Christopher's made peace with the fact that I yelled at him for smashing up the Jeep, and most of the time I have too, but that guilt, that shame, there's, it's useless. I've had mediums say, write it down and burn it, or write it down and send it up with a Chinese lantern, all of those regrets, because they're not going to help. They're not going to change. Nothing's going to change what happened. It's there. It's in the cards. People say that's not fair. And then I tell people, what fair is? Fair is where you go to ride the merry-go-round and eat cotton candy. Fair doesn't fit into it, right? This is what happened. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah. People say to me all the time, but it's not fair. And I'm with you. It's not fair. You're right.
You're right. Now what? Yeah.
Now what? Yeah. Get over it. And now what? Yeah. So we're going to take a little station break
Okay.
because this is a good point to do it. This is Loretta Brown. My guest today, of course, is Joe McQuillen. We're not done yet, Pop. My lessons from the other side. And I do have to, this is Christopher.
Yeah.
The last time you were on my show, he woke me up and said, "Hey, where's my picture?" So I'm making sure that I get his beautiful face. And there's Joe, right? And get you both on there.
Yeah.
I feel like he said thank you. Yes. And we're going to take a little station break. We'll be right back.
All right, all clear. And then still live on YouTube. Yes.
We're still live on YouTube, Joe.
Okay.
I just want to cry.
Yeah. Well, I just did.
Yeah.
So we're even.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have a problem with that. And I tell parents that when it's time to cry, cry. You're not going to cry all day. Cry till you stop crying.
Yeah.
It's like a tidal wave. It hits and then it goes back out. And I stop crying and then I wash my face or walk on the deck or light a cigar and then go back to work or do whatever I'm doing. But it's when you try to hold those tears in, that's when the trouble starts. Let it go, man. Drop the rock.
Yeah, because so many people are like, "Oh, I've got to be so strong, and I've got to be this, and I've got to be that, and blah blah blah," and yeah.
I'm no shrinking violet, And I wrote a subject about. I wrote one of the parts of the book is talking about that grief is messy, and it's not for the faint of heart, And I quote, Ben would like this, I quote, the coach from the '80 Olympic hockey team, about a bruise in the legs a long way from the heart, and it's messy, and you gotta do it to get through it.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Does it get any easier?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it does. It gets, never goes away. You acquire tools to deal with it. And those tools you put them in your tool belt and you deal with it. And some moments just take your knees out but you're familiar with the pain. So you know what to do with it now. Where before it would just take your knees out and you're incapacitated.
Keep it up there, Joe. Got to bring you guys back on here. Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. Stand by.
Benny, you always choose the best music. Anyway, yeah, thanks. Anyway, welcome back to the original Loretta Brown Show. And I am Loretta Brown. Find out more about me at ReikiOasis.com or the KKNW 1150 archives. All the shows are archived and you can download them and listen to them all day long. My guest today, Joe McQuillen. We're not done yet, Pop. My lessons from the other side. And we're talking about his beautiful son, Christopher, on the other side. Yeah.
My favorite subject.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get it. I also, for the people that can see, I have this beautiful printout of all these pictures. And it's one of the things I love about your book, by the way. You have a lot of pictures in there.
Right.
But I'm doing this for Christopher.
Right.
I'm showing the family pictures because it's important.
Yeah, it is.
Important. Yeah. So what happens when someone passes, Joe? What happens? Is there a door, a tunnel? What happens?
It's interesting. I'll tell you what. I'm going to read you something that is in the second book that Chris said to me. And he came to me on 10/16/18, and we do it at the same time, 3:00 in the morning. And he said, "I miss you too, Dad. We will share this place, this incredible place. It will be like crossing a shallow stream. You have to cross it yourself, but I'm right on the other side. So it's just natural to walk across to me. And then you're in. You'll be on the other side. You and me. How's that for awesome? But not today. Today is for writing books and presentation. Carry the word, Pop. We are all behind you." So these are the things that tell me, that remind me that none of this came from me. I never had the imagination of knowing that crossing over, and he described it as crossing a shallow stream. I mean, I picture it in my mind. and that he can't help me cross over. I've got to make that step voluntarily, but then he's there, so that's what he tells me. I'll tell you another thing. He told me his beloved godmother, and I'm writing about her. I've written about her in the second book, and I'm writing more in the third, was my sister Marcia, who I adored, was a real source of love for me, real source of, these big Irish families, there's not a lot of time for it, but she found time. And she loved me during a period of time when I wasn't so lovable, right? I didn't love myself, but she did. And she felt the same way about my boy. That was her godson. She adored Chris. And Chris, growing up, didn't trust a lot of adults. He trusted me, and a handful of adults, but he trusted his sister, his Aunt Marcia. So, and she crossed over February 6, 2019. So I was there the week before she transitioned. And we spent a lot of time talking. And she said, honey, she said, I read your book. You gave me the greatest gift. I read your book and I'm not afraid to die. Now, this from somebody who gave me so much love. It was so grateful that something that impactful. January 9th, 2020, I went and saw a medium called Jill Nicole out in the western suburbs. And she said, Christopher's here. And she said, but also there's a woman here who's got very pretty, but she has glasses, round glasses, which was what Marcia looked like when she was teaching high school in the 70s, And she said, to tell you, honey, thanks for the greatest gift. So, I mean, that's when, those validations, just saying, okay, Marcia's in my life. Now, Christopher said to me about his Aunt Marcia, when we knew she was going, she fought valiantly for 4 years and then just said, I'm done. She was strong, wonderful, loving, compassionate. And she said, I'm done. Here's what, and she organized her own funeral, her reception for a funeral, she was the most capable person I know. And Chris said, Dad, don't worry about when Marcia crosses, I promise you I'll be there. And after she transitioned, Chris came to me and said, look, when Marcia crossed, we were all there. Jerry, Billy, Bobby, Pat. We were all there. Yeah. He said, but then she had to go somewhere, like a spa. And when she came back, she was younger than when I remember her as a kid. So it dawned on me, sometimes you write this down at 3:00 in the morning, then you got to figure it out. So it dawned on me what he was saying is that the cancer stayed with her body on this side, but the trauma went with, her spirit when it crossed. So they had to deal, although she met with the soul family, she then had to go somewhere. What a soft, gentle, loving way to, like a spa. What woman doesn't like to go to a spa, right? Like a spa. And then she came, and that's at the spa, she shed the trauma and rejoined the soul family. So Marcia has come through with a number of medium meetings with Christopher. I'll tell you a funny story. I was at her house. I finished, the book made sense and came together. I was in Florida for a good part of February and March. And it was her house. And her 2 kids own it, and they're lovely kids, and I adore them. And so I'm spending 2 months there this year. And the kids come down for a week at a time separately, and Sally and I meet at Siesta Key separately at another week. And I had this folder full of data and a bunch of stories and notes, but I wasn't sure where I was going with it. And I was so afraid to put something out that wasn't as good as the first book, that would tarnish the memory. And yet I was committed to doing a book. People are always asking about book. And I got to Florida, it all came together. It all just flowed, there. And I was there writing and working and doing, and playing a little golf, or a lot of golf. She lives on a golf course, she did. And I got on a phone call with a medium friend, Sherry Jewell, who's just a pal. We were just calling to talk. And she said, let's see if Christopher's around. She goes, Christopher. She goes, he's not here. She said, which is very surprising because Chris comes through her all the time. But she said, your sister's here. Are you at her house? And I said, yeah, I am. And she said, wow, that's amazing. Did you put flowers at her grave on her anniversary? I said, yeah, I did. Caroline was in town. And we went and did that. And she goes, okay. She said to tell you that her house is your house. And I thought, that's amazing. Then she said, she doesn't want you to lock yourself out. She wants to know where the keys are. where are her keys? So I went and looked under the mat. When I went up to Sarasota, I put them under the mat for the guy who caretaker, and they weren't there. So I walked over and I saw a set of master keys on a hook. I took them off the hook, put them in my pocket, and walked out on the deck to finish the conversation. And she said, Marcia said, put the keys back on the hook. Yeah, we weren't on a Zoom call, Loretta. I was on a cell phone call. And it just made me laugh and smile and say, okay, I'm not going to lock myself out. And I'm going to put the keys back. I'm going to do like I always did, which is listen to Aunt Marcia, and I did. But that's just the validation that they, the ones that you love, the love is so strong that they can connect if you do your part,
Yeah, I'm smiling because people will say to me, they'll say something like, my dad loved ducks and he died, and I saw all these ducks this morning. Do you think that's a message from my dad? And I'll go, well, what do you think? Right? Like, yeah, but it is this thing, like you get all these validations. So in case you're having doubts, like, I don't know, after this amount of time of interacting with this, do you still have doubts, Joe?
No, I don't. I mean, I'll tell you a story. The first 6 months, I had called that wonderful medium, Nancy Myers, and she had told me things that were quite true. And I read about later on in the coroner's report about what the events of the day and what happened. And we made a couple of connections, and like a good medium, she'll say, look, this isn't a weekly thing. It's like a good therapist. You got to go live your life a little bit and then come back and, we'll check in on Chris, but he's busy too, So after about 6 months, I really wanted to connect with somebody in person, and she had moved to Surprise, Arizona. So I looked up on a website, turned out to be Bob Olson's website, and he was rating mediums according to your location. So this guy, Andrew Anderson, came up. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go see, I make an appointment, give him your first name, boom, you're done, cell phone number. And before I was going to go see him, I did two things. The first was, there's right there is a leather bracelet Christopher gave me, and I hope he's mentioning it to you. He gave me when we were in Disney World when he was about 5. And the second thing is I had just gotten in the mail from Amazon some shamrock seeds. Now, Sally didn't even know I got these seeds yet because, we just hadn't connected about talking about it. But as I talk about in the first book, I moved them over one grave plot. When the snow melted after we buried him on January 8th, 2016, and snow melted in the late spring, he was next to another couple, even though we bought 6 graves. I was livid. So I kicked the couple of doors and jumped up and down and wrote a check, and we moved him over one grave. And I'll occupy the grave he was in. Nobody else will be in that. But it's perfect. It's really, Spirit told me to do this, and I did it. And in a medium session, Chris laughed and said, "That's so you, Dad." But I'm really glad I did it. So this June day, June 30th, 2016, the dirt around his grave was loose. So I planted these shamrock seeds, which still come up to this day. And I went and saw Andrew Anderson. I walked in and he said, "Your family celebrated something on the other side. What was that?" And I said, "Well, Sally and my wedding anniversary the night before." And we, of course, didn't celebrate. We were still in grief. But he said, "Your family on the other side did." I said, "Oh, that's nice." Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you. And then he said, and Chris validates, he wants to send you a validation that you're wearing the bracelet he gave you under a cuff. And he said, you planted something at his grave today. Now that's the moment. And I think anybody that I'm talking to should think about this. That's the moment it went from believing to knowing.
Yeah.
I never look back. Never look back. The messages he gives me are oftentimes contrary to my feelings. The first meeting I had with him, he told me I had to let go of a resentment about the young man whose parents owned the lake house. I didn't want to. I wanted to hold on to him. And told me I had to let go of it. And I said, okay, for you. And I thought, when am I going to see this kid again? Flash forward 12 hours at the grave. I get a text from some of his friends. I show up. There's There's 35 kids there, including that boy who I had already made peace with Christopher. So he was doing a very loving thing for his old man. He took what would have been an awkward moment and made it a very sensitive, loving one. And I said to the kid, it's not your fault. It could have happened at my house. Could have happened anywhere, Yeah. But I wasn't ready to let go of that. He told me to.
For those people listening who may not be clear about this, I want to just sort of very quickly, Joe's journey from the death of his son to working through with mediums to the point, Joe, where you connect directly with your son yourself. And also this idea that all you got to do is cross the stream. Like he can't cross the stream for you. But I want you to talk just a little bit about, when he's around you because you can feel him. And I also feel the departed, they'll rub on me.
Right.
And I want you to explain to the listening audience, what's the difference between that and when you're doing your spirit writing or whatever you call it?
Well, that's great. And the spirit writing is this, it started on the first anniversary of his crossing, January 3rd, 2017. And I was in my office and this office used to be his bedroom. So it's a thin place, which I write about in the second book, where the veil is thinnest between two worlds. So I love this place. This was his bedroom. I know he's around. I feel him. I smell him. I've occasionally, only in meditation, seen him, mostly only twice in my dreams, and I'm doing whatever I can. But his second grade teacher used to say to him, "You get what you get, and you don't get upset." So I've gotten all these gifts, and if I get clairvoyance, dang, that's a trifecta. So on that day, I came in here, what happens? I get woken up at 3:00 in the morning when he wants to visit like this, when he has something to tell me. And I came in here and I aligned my chakras and I lit the sage and I lit the candles and I had pictures of him out around. And I did a guided meditation on the phone, which I just pick randomly, but there's some really good ones out there. And if you don't have a good one, then go to the next one, And I felt him around, and all of a sudden he started giving me downloads, some messages. And I happened to have a legal pad on my desk with a pen, and I started writing. And this has continued, since January 3rd, 2017, that, every, at least twice a month, I'll get the nod that it's time to meet. And people go, "Oh, how do you get up at 3:00 in the morning?" I'm like, "Are you crazy? Spend time with your kid. You're not going to get up at 3, because you do. It takes a lot out of you. You're exhausted. You're emotionally spent. You then got to go to work. So what? Suck it up. I got a message from him. This is funny. When my sister was transitioning in 2019, and I went down to we really connect on Gulf beaches at night, Chris and I. So I went down to Naples beach, one of the beaches, and parked my car, went down there, sat on the beach, lit a cigar. And he gave me a message. He said, go to Siesta Key. And I'm thinking like, dude, that's 4 hours round trip. I got a 8:00 flight out in the morning. And I said, all right, I'm going to make you a deal, Chris. I'm going to look on my phone. And if Siesta Key's open, I'll go. And I open up and dang, if it says Siesta Key Beach, open 24 hours. I was like, oh, good. So I stop at my sister's, grab a couple cigars and some Red Bulls. And sorry about this, Avis, rent a car, and drive up there. And, walked out, took my shoes off, walked out. It's amazing stars. I've been all over. I've been to Benny's home country of Alaska. My in-laws live in the North Woods. I've been to the Caribbean. I've seen some most beautiful stars. Are never as pretty as this. It's beautiful. And I just felt warm and full and complete. And I was in his presence, or he was around me, and I could tell. And I got a text from a medium friend, and Sherry Jewell, who said, "Chris is around you. Look at the stars." I was already looking up at the stars. It was like, great message. You're about 30 seconds late, but talk about an affirmation. And then, I got back to the car, drove back, and I know what it was he was with a buddy on the other side, and he poked him in the shoulder or in the elbow in his side, and said, "See, I told you my old man was showing up." And so I tell people all the time, when you get that message, do it, whatever it is. That's that higher calling. Pay attention to it. Don't talk yourself out of it, or you wouldn't have that magic moment that I had. You know, I tell parents, would you travel 4 hours round trip to spend a half hour with your kid now? Of course you would. So just do it, man.
Yeah. I just love that so much. Because it's precious. The time is precious. Our kids are precious. And I'm even thinking when you're talking, because I got kids, like, how many times do we go, oh man, I'm just too tired, I can't do that? And it's like, just suck it up, Buttercup, just do it, right? Do your part.
That's a term I use out there. It's funny. Even my dog, my dog is 14, my yellow lab, and Chris had mentioned that he's there with Casey, our other lab, who made it to 15, that she's transitioning already. She's getting ready to come, the new lab, or my 14-year-old Cassidy. But, she's older. And so where she used to just go outside in the fenced in yard, now she wants to go for a walk late at night. It like fills her day. So, you know what? Last night it was 28 degrees. It was cold. And I wanted to go to bed, but I look at this dog and I think this dog is, as you just said, precious. So off we went for a walk around the block. How much, what skin off my nose to make something or somebody happy? A little bit of service goes a long way. And that's what I'm doing. I live my life two ways, two tenets, Loretta. One is to please my God, and the other is to make my son proud. I'm a different guy than I was prior to January 3rd, 2016. Do I look like a guy who would quote Haruki Murakami? But he said, once the storm is over, you won't remember how you made it through, how you managed to survive. You won't even be sure, in fact, whether the storm is really over. But one thing is certain. When you come out of the storm, you won't be the same person who walked in. That's what storms are all about. And I'm not the same person that walked through that storm January 3rd, 2016. I'm grateful for that part.
Yeah. In your book, you touch a little bit on soulmates and twin flames.
Yes. Yeah. Sure. You know what? I had no idea. I mean, I thought soulmates was a Hallmark thing. And I'm still, we need people to understand that your love of your life doesn't necessarily make somebody your soulmate, right? It doesn't. It makes that person your love of your life, right? Doesn't mean you've lived lives before. Twin flames mean you share a soul. Now, I've been told by a medium or two that Chris and I are twin flames, that we share a soul. Now, I'm also, what I'm doing for the third book is working on past lives regression. I want to know more because I'm confident. I've been told it makes sense that Christopher and I spent past lives together. That's why we were so comfortable. And then in a number of those lives, we were siblings, which makes sense why we were that easy to connect with, right? I was always the dad, always will be. But in past lives, I think we were siblings. So we could just be, which is unusual in this age of constant activity. Him and I could just be. And so I also big fan of soul families, right? So, so they're my oldest friend in the world, Al Conrad. We met Bishop Time in high school in 1971, right? The minute I met, we became best friends. We've been friends all our lives. There's something there deeper than two knuckleheads at 14 meeting. And we've had, he's helped me through my alcoholism. I was there through his wife's transitioning. He was there through Christopher's. He comes every year. I see him when I'm in Florida, and he comes up for the golf outing and stays with us. And I just adore the guy. So, but there's something deeper with just being best buds. You know what I mean? There's a connection there that goes back to another lifetime. There's some familiarity, and that's what happens. And soul family. I mean, Christopher has said, he's with the entire family. I was doing a reading with Andrew Anderson. No, I was at a reading, a session, 100 people with Thomas John. And Thomas was, naming all these, doing these amazing things, but it was all on the other side of the room. And Sally and I were up front, which is not a natural place for me to sit in any classroom in my life, was up front. And we were up front, and he was on the other side. And he kept looking and kept saying, there's a family and members keep showing up and there's a lot of them. And he said, frankly, they kind of scare me. And he laughed, and Sally elbowed me and she said, it's your family, right? I said, I got a pretty good idea. So then he looked over and he said, okay, I got to stop. I got to address this. Who's got a family whose patriarch? His name is Jerry, but it's not Gerald. It's another variation. And I raised my hand and I said, that's Jerry. He goes, what was his name? I said, Jeremiah. He said, okay. Then there's Billy, Pat, Bobby. Wait a minute. He said, Bobby took his life in the 70s. And is that brother? I said, yeah. And he said, then there's your son. Is that Christopher? I said, yeah. He goes, well, he's throwing bunny ears behind Pat's head. Did they? He used to tease Pat. I said, all the kids teased Aunt Pat. And so the whole family named every single one of them. And then he looked to me and said, who's Sarah? And I pointed to Sally. Her legal name is Sarah. I said, he goes, no, 100 years old, other side, Sarah. That's her grandmother. She was named after Sarah. And her name was also Sally. And she said, well, she doesn't say much, but she's always with you, Sally. Just want you to know that. Now, this guy named 5 family members by name, and so those are just the validations and the love. I'll tell you something he said to me. He said, all right, everybody's going back. He said, but Christopher's bringing a young kid through, Thomas or James, whatever the kid's name is. And his mom's name is Melissa. And he said, who lost a son, Melissa? And the son is shy. And it was within this year. And a woman said, 6 months ago, I lost my son, and named him and said he was very shy. He goes, well, Christopher's bringing him forward. And you got to thank Chris because he's shy. He wouldn't have come through on his own. But think about Christopher with his arm around him, bringing him forwards for you to talk to him. And that's the kind of kid Chris was, on this side or the other.
That is such a beautiful story. And that makes me tear up again. But it brings a point forward. So when Christopher is, well, let me just put it this way.
Sure.
So he's got something to do on the other side. He does things.
Yeah, you know what? They have jobs.
Right.
He described. He said, "Dad, your place, your side, your world is like football camp." He said, it's a lot of work, a lot of toil, a lot of sweat, but it's fun and you love it, and the camaraderie and the success and the competition. He said, it's wonderful, but it's hard. He said, my house, my place is like a beach bungalow in Maui. What a trade up, right? So, but he does have a job, and his job is, he was like a Pied Piper with kids. Kids just adored Chris, patient, loving. And you got to understand, this kid was a party boy, a good athlete, but he was just so sweet, tough as nails. But he was just so sweet. And so I'm told that he deals with young souls who transition over, who are confused and scared, and that he works with those kids. And that's his job, and he continues, everybody has a job over there, and he continues to do that. I know that he's moved up in levels on the other side, and he's talked about that. And he's reassured me that that's not going to change our connection. He said to me, think of it, Dad, it was like me either calling you from Arizona or Los Angeles. Doesn't matter. The connection still is clear. So that reinforced to me that as he progresses and helps others, I'm not going to lose connection with my boy.
Yeah. Thank you for that, because I actually was, I was going to ask you about that, because he feels different to me today than 3 years ago. I'm like, something has shifted, more of a presence or a maturity or something.
He's an old soul. I think he's
very old.
He's grown into his soul, is what I think is happening. And he's benefiting a lot of people, including your audience. None of this happens without him.
So we've got like a minute. What do you really want people to get from the book, and where can they find it? Go get it now.
Okay. Yeah, get it. Both books are on Amazon. I have a website that's joemcquillen.net. If you want to reach out to me, my email is jbmcquillen@gmail.com. And what I want you to get from the book is that when an event takes a loved one from this side, it doesn't mean they're gone. It does mean you got to do a little work, a little research, copied some people that have done it ahead of you. Nothing that I do is original, right? Everything I do, I've grabbed from somebody else. On my website, I publish the steps I take before I connect with Chris. Try it, adjust it, move it around, but most of them are tried and true that I've taken from somebody else and it works, right?
Yeah.
And if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
All right. Joe, thank you so much. What a joy and delight and blessing to talk to you and everybody out there. We're not done yet, Pop. Joe McQuillen. Go get it. Yeah, you'll be glad.
Go and Chris McQuillen.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And Christopher, thanks so much. Bye.
Thanks, Christopher. Love you.